My name's Nikki Clough, and I'm happy to be bringing you this short CPD session. What we thought we'd do is take a bit of a change, a bit of a break from the normal technical CPD session. And as we're going through a bit of a period of change again, we seem to now be shifting quite quickly to working back in the office as opposed to working remotely. And that's thrown up a few people issues. And so we thought it would be interesting to bring you a soft skill topic this time around. And what we're going to do is focus a bit on team development. So I'm just going to share my screen with you here and just get that going. Here we go. So what we're going to look at is what the issues are, and then we're going to look at a couple of models and pieces of research around team working and team development, and there's some themes there which we think will be useful to draw out, which lead to some practical tips, some just quick things that might make a difference. We're certainly not going to delve too deeply just in this short session, but just a few ideas that we thought would be useful to share. So what are we going to talk about? What are the issues that have come to our attention? So we're very fortunate at Insight to work with a number of different firms, whether it's through training, whether it's through the file review team, whether it's through consultancy and so on. And we're privileged to be able to chat to people about what's going on. And the key things that in terms of the people side that people have been talking to us about are these three. These are the top three. So recruitment and retention being one, or problems with it really. So fantastic that professional accountants are very much in demand and there's lots of work out there, fantastic. But particularly small and medium firms are telling us that they're finding it hard to attract and retain, keep the best staff. So, it's fantastic that we have a profession with so many opportunities. That's such a positive thing. But firms are saying to us, well, look, we just want to be considered as a place where some of those people would plan to stay and to build their career with perhaps the firm that they qualified with. Maybe not everybody, but at least that be one of the options. Secondly, the topic of flexible working is coming up quite a bit. So obviously, a couple of years ago, we all had to pivot really very quickly to working flexibly, working remotely, working from home. And there's been some pros and cons of that. And some people have found that to be really, really helpful, and that they can really get the best out of working from home, the peace and quiet for some people, and the focus perhaps they achieve. And people are saying, well, you know what? Some people are saying, I'd like to continue with that. And what firms are finding is that some people want to come back to the office full time, some people don't want to come back to the office at all, and there's lots of people in between. And how do you have those conversations, which potentially could cause some conflict, where perhaps a firm wants people to come into the office maybe more than they want to? How can you have those conversations? How can you be fair as well across the board? So that's something that's coming up. And I think the final topic is just thinking about the people who have been the new joiners, I guess, particularly the trainees who joined during this time. And so many of them joining the profession haven't had the opportunity to come and work with colleagues, at least face to face, and really have missed out on a lot of those professional skills, the soft skills, if you like, the people skills, the business skills that are so important. And people, many firms just don't know each other as well as they used to, and that's something that needs to be addressed, particularly when you're dealing with maybe an issue that's a conflict, perhaps. So that's really, really important. So let's have a think about what might help. What might help. I want to first of all go through the work of Patrick Lencioni. So if anybody's ever, if you're familiar with him, he's done a lot of work on teams. He's written a fantastic book, a little bit American-y, but really worth a look at. And he looked actually at what went wrong, what goes wrong. Why don't teams work well together? And I'm thinking here of teams across the board. I'm certainly thinking about how we in firms have to come together as a team in order to achieve results. Now, what Lencioni found was you have to start with trust. People have to be able to trust each other. They need to be able to be open with each other. There needs to be a culture where people can admit mistakes and weaknesses and trust each other that they won't be punished, I suppose, for that. And if there's an absence of trust, then people don't engage in productive conflict. And by conflict, I don't mean an argument necessarily, but differences of opinion, bringing ideas and bringing viewpoints, and trusting that colleagues and bosses will listen to the ideas that are being brought. And if that doesn't happen, there's then a lack of commitment, because if you haven't been involved in the debate, you're less likely to commit to the course of action that's been decided upon. And therefore, you're less likely to feel accountable for that course of action, for the work that's being carried out, and less likely to perhaps call other people out who may not be playing their part. And overall, there's an inattention then to results. And what you find is then that people are more interested perhaps in building their own career rather than committing to the overall objective and purpose of the firm and to their colleagues. So what to do? Well, it's probably not going to surprise you that Lencioni says, well, let's flip that around and let's build trust. How do you do that? Well, one of the key things is to just get to know each other better, and more on that in a second. If you trust each other, more likely that you'll be able to call out what's wrong, that you'll commit to the decisions, to the plans, to the work of the firm, hold each other, yourself and other people, to account, and that's how you achieve optimal results. So it's got to start with that trust. It's got to start with getting to know each other better. Now that brings me on now to the work of Bruce Tuckman. You may have heard of Tuckman. If you haven't heard of Tuckman, you may well have heard these words before and go, that's where this comes from. So he goes back, I think it's 1965 actually, his original research, but it very much still holds true today. So in order for a team to be able to achieve success, they have to go through these 4 stages. So forming, storming, norming, and performing. And what he looked at is how effective the team was in terms of achieving their goals, and also looked at the kind of the morale and the energy levels, what was going on between the various people. So just really quickly talking about each of the stages in turn. So the first stage, forming. So this is, let's think about our new people coming in here. When you join an organization, when you join a firm, people on first meeting each other are tending to be fairly formal, probably fairly reserved, perhaps overly polite, walking on eggshells maybe a little bit. There's a bit of anxiety. There's probably not sort of a big load of energy going on. Certainly conflict is avoided here. People don't want to upset each other. They want to be accepted into the group. Now, this is an interesting stage. Then you go through the storming stage. Now, this is where people drop their guard a little bit. They start to feel safe within the team, so the real them can come out. There may be some personality clashes, difference in working styles, perhaps. There may be conflicts coming out here. But it's really important that you go through this stage. In fact, Tuckman says you have to go through this stage in order to get to the next point, which is the norming phase, which is now people are starting to trust each other, they understand each other, they're able then to work out who does what, and they can start getting on with the job, and it's after you've gone through that norming phase that you can then get to the performing stage, which is where the team is stable and working well, the best that they can work really, and they don't have to be heavily supervised in order to do that, and probably conflicts are very quickly resolved. So Tuckman would say every team needs to go through those 4 stages. And obviously in an ideal world, what you want is to go through those 4 stages pretty quickly, to shorten the time it takes to get to that performing stage. And another thing to bear in mind is that every time the team changes, you go back a step. So that team change can be new people coming in. It can also be people leaving, changing the dynamics. And I think that there's something in the new way of working as well that impacts on the way the team behaves. I think it's no surprise when we look at the various reality TV shows, perhaps that are on maybe the Jungle or what have you, that very often the personnel are changed in order almost to keep them at the storming stage, because that's quite lively and that's quite interesting. But actually, we want to move people through that stage quickly. So there's a real purpose there for those team building activities that often take place when you're new to a role. What are they for? They're to help you get to know your colleagues quickly. They're helping you get through that storming stage. It doesn't have to be angry. It sounds angry, doesn't it, storming? But it's the stage where people have dropped their guard, perhaps almost shown a bit of vulnerability, that they are able then, and this is the building of trust, isn't it? This is how you build trust with your colleagues, that you can then move on to that next stage. So there's a real connection here, I think, between what Lencioni was saying and what Tuckman was saying. So I think there's a lot here that we can address from both models and do deliberately to help our people and our teams move through the team development stage and move through the tricky times perhaps that we perhaps might be going through now. So what are we going to do? So what? So these are the kind of drawing on that, the 4 elements that we think are really, really important right now. So building trust, encouraging productive conflict storming, being very clear on objectives, and just putting in the time to address people issues. So just a little bit on each of those. Building trust, first of all. So this is going to be all about communication. So it's about listening, really listening to the other people that you work with, letting them know, particularly if you're a leader, if you're a manager, a partner, leading others here, letting them know that you are listening to them, not just waiting for them to stop speaking, but communicating back, taking the time to connect with other people and letting them know that they're important and their contribution is valued. And encouraging other people to do the same, to take time out of their day. A lot of people have really, or some people even have enjoyed being in control of their workspace, perhaps if they were working from home. Other people haven't and were seeking connection. But we're going to have to re-establish some of those relationships. So expect that to be happening. And I think then that moves on to the second point, which is to encourage that storming stage. Again, it doesn't have to be angry at all. Conflict doesn't have to be cross. It just simply means a difference of opinion, but people have to be encouraged to give their view. And I think we can all too quickly jump to smoothing things over, not wanting to upset people. If we do that, we never get out of the forming stage. We never move on. So building an atmosphere of trust, but encouraging and not being afraid of conflict, and actually encouraging people actively to speak up. That takes a little bit of bravery sometimes, and again, it may involve showing that little bit of vulnerability. Being super clear is my next point, on objectives, on his good old SMART objectives. We love a SMART objectives, but what are the goals? What are people's roles and responsibilities? Are they clear? Have you had those conversations? Don't just wait for the 6-monthly appraisal. Do people know where they fit in, how their contribution matters, and for heaven's sake, making sure that we are giving regular feedback on what's good and what's done well as what needs improvement, so people know that they matter, and they're being held accountable for the work that they do. That's actually very motivating for people. Is to know that what they're doing really matters. And then just putting in the time. People management, people skills, soft skills. We often say we don't really know why people skills are called soft skills, because actually they're really quite hard and they take up time. So you need to be prepared to carve out some time in your day to focus on people, and it will be time well spent and time that will then we hope be given back to you as you're able to address some of the issues that you might be having. So good luck with that. We hope you find this useful. Good luck with getting back out there, and yeah, thank you very much for listening.